has always been just ripe for speculations, and I gotta say at some points the fan theories were actually more interesting than what actually happened in the game. We believed everything from the old gods being just crazy power level villains to Sylvanas becoming the new Lich Queen, and many of these speculations were just completely debunked. So what are the most interesting fan theories that ended up being completely false? How about fighting dragons, demon lords, and facing off against other players? Well, you can do all that in Raid Shadow Legends. They just added a new legendary champion that some of you may recognize, Ninja. He's got a katana, a bow and arrow, as well as spells, and is actually one of the best champions in the game, useful against pretty much any boss. He's got a crazy AoE skill as one of the best crowd controls, making him incredibly useful for PvP and Doom Tower as well. What I like about Raid is that there are so many champions you can collect, as well as items and abilities you can mix, that you can make limitless combinations. Right now, Ninja is completely free, but is only available until October 15th, and never again after that. There is a new Doom Tower update, 2 new bosses, 2 artifact sets, as well as various events. If you wanna start on the right foot, check out my link or scan the QR code, and all new players will get an epic hero, Chonoru, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard to summon a champion immediately. Rewards will be here in the inbox for the next 30 days, so see you in game. Number 10. Elin is a Naru. This has been the most dominant theory on the origin of Elin for a few years at this point, because we really had like no idea who she actually was. It all started with a few hints, but one of the main ones was when Velen said that Elin reminds him quite a bit of a Naru based on her characteristics, and Tirada just told him to keep his religion to himself. Really, I can't say Elin being a Naru was ever a very strong proof-backed theory. We literally had 0 real clues on who Elin could be, so we pretty much just took this theory with open hands, and we started believing she was a Moon Naru, as, you know, her servants were already priests anyway, so I guess it made sense. Well, in Shadowlands, this theory was just completely debunked, as we learned that she is the sister of the Winter Queen. She is apparently of the Life Pantheon, and despite her exact identity still being mysterious, I'd say that her being a Naru is just not the case. Number 9. Muazzala. Pretty much any theory Muazzala related from the BFA era before we heard about this Loa of Death. We never really saw him, but only had a small glimpse of his existence. We knew that even the actual Loa of Death once somebody feared him and was subordinate to Muazzala, the boss. This naturally led to theories that Muazzala is Titan related, maybe a Void Lord, or at best an old god, possibly N'Zoth or Yogg-Saron impersonating a troll Loa, but ultimately we believed he was some sort of a cosmological nefarious being akin to the Jailer. Well, Shadowlands comes out, and we learn that while he worked with the Jailer, he's really not that big of a deal. Just a damn Loa that has a tiny bit of land in Ardenweald. Now, of course, he played some crucial roles on Azeroth, such as corrupting Vol'jin and Odin, but really all of that was as he was following the Jailer's orders. He was in no way actually some nefarious, scheming Void Lord type being, but just a minion of the Jailer. Number 8. Eonar and the Winter Queen. This is one of the most recent theories, and the one that I also believed myself. I made a video on it, which at the time really did make a lot of sense. So through the Ysera cinematic, we learned that the Winter Queen has a sister, that Ysera was her pet, and apparently they split a really long time ago. Many people believe that this was Elin, which was correct. However, the theory that it was Eonar made a ton of sense as well. The Winter Queen was the queen of the Death Realm of Ardenweald, which was like the mirror version of the Emerald Dream. On the other hand, Freya, the Titan Keeper, created the Emerald Dream by the Old Lore, which at the moment doesn't seem to be the case. Freya was in turn imbued with power by the Titan of Life Eonar, and her powers were also given to Ysera, the mentioned pet. So really, it made a ton of sense. On one side, the sister of the Emerald Death Realm, and on the other of the Emerald Dream and the Titan of Life. By the original lore, it really was the answer. However, pretty much of what we thought from the Chronicles shifted, and it turns out that the Emerald Dream was more than likely created by the first ones, and that Elin is essentially of the Pantheon of Life, which is just a completely new concept, and by the most recent Tirana cinematic, this theory was just completely debunked, as Elin and the Winter Queen actually interacted with each other. Number 7. Vrathian. Not really an exact theory, but I'd say most Vrathian theories were just completely disproven. Back in Mesopotamia, Vrathian was a really big deal. This mysterious son of Deathwing that apparently has a huge future ahead of him, and he was also close to Anduin, who also has a huge future ahead of him. One of the strongest theories at the time was that he's going to play some crucial role in either the Legion or the Void Invasion, and that he has some types of visions that will determine the fate of the entire universe. Now, while he did of course play a big role in the defeat of N'Zoth, really nearly 10 years passed and he really hadn't done all that much overall. Neither was he one of the most important characters ever. While it is of course definitely possible that in a future Void Invasion he could be quite relevant, I do doubt Vrathian will ever have the importance that we had originally envisioned for him. Number 6. Battle for Azeroth. So, when the expansion started and there was an obvious old god influence in the background, people went wild with speculations, as in my opinion, the old gods had some of the craziest potential just due to their mystery and really the build-up since Warcraft 3. The famous theory was that the war was actually orchestrated by them, most importantly N'Zoth to break himself free, and the entire battle for Azeroth was supposed to be just one long, elaborate build-up for a subsequent Void expansion that would end up as the worst invasion that has ever struck our planet. Seriously, it just makes total sense. Muazzala was in the background, we knew she worked for N'Zoth, and the old gods are known to manipulate and work through key figures in order to accomplish their goals, as they had originally done with Deathwing. We figured that N'Zoth was behind Teldrassil, not Sylvanas just being evil, because why would they do another War Chief bad expansion? But boy, were we wrong. It also made sense that the old god tentacles infiltrated the two factions to battle each other so that we would waste our resources as we were already drained by the Burning Legion war. And what even further confirmed this was when N'Zoth actually freed himself and we were waiting for some big crazy reveal, something really crazy to happen. However, ultimately, N'Zoth went away with a bang of a kid's firecracker. We learned that this was all orchestrated by the jailer and that the Shadowlands and the Void was really not that big of a deal. Number 5. Anduin and Artis. I gotta say, right off the bat, this was one of the easiest theories to disprove, and I personally never really bought into it, but I can see why a lot of people caught onto this because it does make some sense. Recently, especially in the Shadowlands, it is so obvious that they're making parallels between Artis and Anduin. Both were princes, both were kings, although Artis was a Lich King, and now they both serve the jailer. The continuation of the theory is that Anduin is the child of Jaina and Artis, and even that makes sense because Jaina always had a motherly presence with Anduin. However, this theory is honestly just quite filled with holes, as the timeline can definitely disprove it. Now, the actual ages of the characters and the way time is progressing is really hard to pinpoint exactly, as, you know, Blizzard just constantly shifts this. I don't even know if they know what is going on, but we do have some rough guidelines. Anduin is said to be around 20 years of age. Artis was around 27 to 30 when he was a Lich King, and if he was alive right now, he would, I'd say, be nearing around 40, while Jaina is past 35. However, while Jaina and Artis did have a relationship, that only happened around the time of Warcraft 3, which would mean Anduin would have to be around 15 years old. Plus, really, how would Jaina hide this pregnancy from everyone? Furthermore, as this age thing is easy to fiddle around, let's look at the most damning evidence. Artis actually met Anduin as a baby when he was joining the Silver Hand at the age of 19, so yeah, not much you can wiggle around with there. Now, even though age-wise Artis technically could have had a child really young. There really is no reason why this child would be so hidden and then, you know, raised as a prince of a kingdom on the other side of the continent. It honestly just doesn't make any sense. Number 4. Old Gods ondraenor. I wouldn't say this was much of a case of a debunked theory, but more like Blizzard just went nowhere with this in particular, and this popular theory just ended up being a complete dead end. There was never any strong hint in regards to Old God presence on Draenor, but really there were definitely some nudges in that direction. Some inhabitants of Draenor were closely resembling Old God beings. There was sort of a shadowy, mysterious presence, and most importantly, long ago in TBC, there was apparently a summoned Old God by the Arakoa. However, ultimately nothing really came out of this, and while there was a lot of potential to tie this in with a possible future Void invasion, that just ended up as one big nothing. Number 3. Night Warrior. This isn't a specific theory, but it is more of a mix of all the various scenarios we had expected with the Night Warrior. Back in BFA, Teldrassil burned, Elin had abandoned her people, and we saw Tyrande just go completely insane and call down the dark powers of Elin, which proved just crazy potent during the expansion. Then she went all into the Shadowlands, and then we started learning about various other Night Warriors across the universe and how they used these powers to defeat Old God invasions, as well as how there was a Night Warrior as one of the main people in Revenant. So, naturally, this got many of us to speculate that something crazy was going to happen and that either Tyrande is going to crush Sylvanas with a snap of her fingers or that she was going to blow herself up, but regardless, something crazy would happen. Well, lo and behold, 9.1 cinematic comes out, there is a cool looking battle, but then Elin abandons the Night Warrior in order to save her. Then she pretty much says how she abandoned the Night Elves so that she could shuffle some souls to her sister, and then Tyrande goes on to talk about forgiveness and how it is really crucial to move forward, even though Sylvanas essentially nuked and wiped out like half of her people. It would really be the equivalent of the Blood Elves not fighting the Lich King, but just talking about renewal. Let's not fight this Lich King guy, let's just move forward. Overall, the way the Night Warrior storyline moved, it debunked almost all the speculations and ended up with the tiniest bang possible. Number 2. Sylvanas the Lich Queen. This has been one of the longest standing theories, and I can't exactly say it was debunked as it ended up being half true, but definitely not as the fans had originally speculated. So, Sylvanas has really since Warcraft 3 been a sketchy character, to say the least, and there were always two sides to her. Just like the Forsaken, she was always a part of the Horde, but at the same time was openly disloyal and had her own goals and schemes. Well, around the time of Cataclysm, she started going full-on evil as she invaded Gilneas, used the Plague, and committed various different atrocities. Seeing how she ended herself after the defeat of Artis and she started gaining more and more power, we believed that her gathering power would culminate in her ultimately becoming the Lich Queen. It honestly made sense, and it would be a good twist of how she became the thing she most despised. Now, this long-held fan theory actually turned into the expansion that we have right now, and she did actually attack the Lich King, but just before she took the crown, she ended up destroying the helm and doing the entire Shadowlands thing. So yes, the theory that Sylvanas would become the Lich Queen did end up being false, but in its place, something a lot more intertwined happened with the Shadowlands that will soon reach cosmological levels. Number 1. Old Gods, the Master Villains. For the longest time, the Old Gods really were the villains, and I gotta say, I kinda wanna go back to that time when this was the case. Seriously, they were everything you want from a villain. They were these mysterious, insanely powerful ancient beings that used to control the world, but then the gods of the universe came in and imprisoned them. Then you had them leaking their powers across various sides of Azeroth, obscure cults worshipping them and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. There were just these whispers constantly. We always knew they intended to get back to their position to rule the Black Empire again, and we all developed a ton of crazy theories. We believed that since the Icecrown Citadel was built from Serenite Old God material, that Yogg-Saron had manipulated the Lich King. We believed that once they freed themselves, all hell would break loose, and that there would would be nothing that would be able to stop them. We were even told that Sargeras would tremble at their combined might. Well, all of you kinda know how these theories ended. First blow came with the Chronicle, where we were told that the Void Lords, the true villains, just used them as weapons. Then the story developed further, N'Zoth broke free, and I'd say his ending was about as exciting as the ending of Ragnaros, just a simple elemental lord. Then as we further explored the cosmology, we learned that there are bigger forces at play, and that not even their masters, the Void Lords, are really that big of a deal. So ultimately, the old gods end up just as powerful minions of other forces, but not the super scheming grand villains we believed them to be, which debunked almost every theory we had on them. Thank you for watching. Check out what is the origin of the mall by clicking on the screen, and also check out Doronsmovies Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.